can do anything. Anything I want, everything I can. Some things
Welcome
you
to
won't
Breaking the
do
Pattern,
anything.
a podcast where we believe anything is possible for people when they put their minds to the task. Our mission is to help folks optimize their daily lives and reach their full potential by changing mindsets and creating small habits that have huge impacts. Our quest is to help people break harmful patterns of the past and move forward with a new outlook and a new way. I'm your host, Peyton Rose. I'm joined by my co-host, Cody Schiestel. Hello, Cody.
Hey, Peyton. Glad to be here.
Me as well, sir. Last week we covered The Power of When by Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, on the concept of chronotypes. I started using the chronotype model about a year ago. It was an absolute game changer. The takeaway from that podcast is to find your chronotype and start to take the right actions at the right times. You do this, you're going to see big changes very quickly. This week, we're going to talk about mindset. This is something near and very dear to my heart. I can relate to this subject, I feel, in a major way. I've begun to realize lately that my whole life has been geared around mindset for years and years, and I was over the moon when I found the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. So this book is absolutely huge when it comes to breaking our patterns. And if you're a team leader, if you are a business owner, if you are a parent, if you are a coach, if you are a teacher, this is going to be an absolute game changer for you. It's an absolute must read to develop yourself and to develop the people around you, to help influence and to motivate the people around you. When we talk about breaking the pattern, and I want to just kind of reel back on this a little bit. I want to kind of take you through defining what we feel that breaking the pattern is, explain what we mean when we say break the pattern. Simply put, your patterns are the conditions by which you define yourself. So let me repeat that. Your patterns are the conditions by which you define yourself. Every time you say or think to yourself, or hear someone say about you, you're not smart enough, I'm not smart enough, you're not strong enough, I'm not strong enough, you're not good enough, you're an idiot, you're a slob, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too slow, you're dumb, you're not talented enough, you've got no potential, you're just like your father, you're just like your mother, it runs in your genes and you can't do anything about it, this is who you are and you can't change. All of these are lies. All of these are parts of the fixed mindset. All of these are parts of your pattern. And if you hear these sorts of lies enough, you will begin to believe and adopt them. We call these limiting beliefs. That's how we refer to them. And these limiting beliefs will define you if you don't learn how to beat them. Now, in Carol Dweck's book, these limiting beliefs would play a role in the fixed mindset. That's my thought on this. And they could be coming from anywhere. They're likely coming from everywhere. If the people around you have a fixed mindset, then you are likely hearing limiting beliefs all of the time. And they are literally defining you and creating who you are. And what we're on a mission to do is beat the fixed mindset. We want to beat the limiting beliefs. You beat them, you begin to reach your full potential, and that's what this is all about. Breaking your patterns and reaching your full potential. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing this. So let's get into it, Cody. I'm going to turn this conversation over to you and let you lead us through the exploration of Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, and what we can do to develop a growth mindset as opposed to the fixed mindset.
All right, awesome. So almost every area of human endeavor can be dramatically influenced by how we think about our talents and abilities. People with a fixed mindset, those who believe that their abilities are fixed, are less likely to flourish than those with a growth mindset. Those who believe that their ideas can be developed. Mindset reveals how great parents, teachers, managers, and athletes can put this idea to use to foster outstanding accomplishment. I'm going to restart.
No problem.
Almost every area of human endeavor can be dramatically influenced by how we think about our talents and abilities. People with a fixed mindset are less likely to flourish than those with a growth mindset. Mindset reveals how great parents, teachers, managers, and athletes can put this idea to use to foster outstanding accomplishment. By the end of this cast, I hope you'll be able to identify parts of your mind that are growth oriented and parts that are fixed oriented. You'll also be able to have some solid actions that help you develop a growth mindset. First and foremost, I want to emphasize fixed versus growth mindset is not a dichotomy, it's a spectrum. Growth mindset enables our success. It marks the difference between excellence and mediocrity. It influences our self-awareness, our self-esteem, our creativity, our ability to face challenges, our resilience to setbacks, our levels of depression, our tendency to stereotype, among other things. Growth mindset is rising to the challenge when given an opportunity to take it easy. Geniuses in the classical definition are exclusively growth mindset. Einstein said something like that, I'm not smarter than everybody. It's just that I stick to searching the search for an answer. I persist in that search. And one interesting part I want to get into is how this what we're talking about, how it affects parents. Oftentimes we'll hear a term like calling a kid smart. If you're promoting this, if you're trying to ingrain a growth mindset into your child, you do not tell them that they're smart. Instead of telling them they're smart, you need to compliment them on some kind of process they did. You need to compliment them on the fact that they tried it 3 times and then found the right way to do it. And if you don't know about any of those things, there's a really easy solution. Ask them, and they'll be happy to tell you.
How did you get to that conclusion? How did you accomplish this?
Yeah. And that's what the child's really need to be rewarded on their improvement and the processes on the way they did that. By calling them smart, you're in a way putting them into a box or onto a pedestal or something like that, and it puts pressure on that child to
not fail.
And to prove that they are deserving of that title. And
because being a parent, I can definitely, whenever I read this and looked at one, my life growing up, and then 2, how I was actually going about talking to my kids, and when I found this book, they were Wyatt wasn't born yet, and
how old are
Isabel
your kids?
was maybe 2 years old. So Isabel's going to be 6 and Wyatt's going to be 2. And I had already noticed me saying very fixed statements to Isabel at 2 years old. And I was able to immediately understand, I need to change this, change the way that I'm talking to my daughter and the way I will be talking to my son. And so one of the things I notice is it is amazing what happens to the child when you start implementing a growth mindset and you start saying to them growth-oriented statements and start asking them growth-oriented questions. So just to give you an example, instead of saying, and this is, instead of saying, like you mentioned, instead of saying you're so smart, you're just the smartest, say, I see that you really work hard at trying to accomplish this, and it shows. That right there is so huge.
Mhm.
I see you're recognizing them taking action instead of just giving them a compliment. Because like you said, if you're just giving them compliments, you're so smart, they're going to do whatever they can to not fail. And I remember this from my childhood, being told I was smart or being told that I was athletic and so I found myself making excuses. If I ran up against something hard or something difficult, I would just simply say, I'm not really interested in that. Right? I would say, that's just, and the reason why is because I didn't want the challenge. It may show that I'm not as smart as, what I've been told. So I would rather just stick in my lane, not get too uncomfortable, not put myself in a situation that this wasn't always. So this is like you said, it's not a dichotomy where I was always in a fixed mindset, but there were things like, let's say an instrument. I never, I don't know if I would have enjoyed playing an instrument or not. I never gave it a chance. I thought, it's going to take too long, too hard, not going to deal with it. Right. Don't want to fail at that. Don't want to spend a year failing at it. But then I had another thing where academics, for instance, you could tell me I was smart all day, didn't care, didn't really, and certain things maybe, but like I certainly can look at me thinking like I was, like on a mission to prove myself to myself. I was on a mission to grow when it came to academics. So I had a growth mindset when it came to that, fixed mindset when it came to certain other parts of my life. So, and what we'll say here, most people have no idea they're doing this. Most people have no idea that they have a fixed mindset. That's what we're bringing this, to the forefront for with our sphere of influence. You have to work at this. This is a process that goes on every single day. So parents, just start catching yourself whenever you try to praise your kid. And it's not to say don't praise your kid. This isn't something fake, right? And it takes time to develop. But once you do start really tuning into, did I just tell my kid that he wasn't that fast or that he's just not that good at this? Like you're assigning that to your kid. And if he hears it or she hears it enough, they're going to believe it, right? So start noticing as a parent, what am I saying to my kid? Am I putting them in a box? Am I putting them in a place where they're not going to want to take a risk? They're not going to want to be challenged. And like, I'll give another great example. My daughter is going through swim classes right now. And I was able to, talking with her, just communicating with her and saying, man, it's really showing how much work you're doing in the pool with your back kicks and when you're floating. Because man, look at you now, like you're floating. When you started, you couldn't do it at all, but you've been working at it. And watch your kid, their faces will light up. They will be so proud that they're taking these actions, and they're going to start looking at risks or things that they perceive as risky or things that they perceive as comfortable. They're going to start uncomfortable. They're going to start looking at these things as opportunities to learn and grow, right? So from a parent's mindset and from a parent's perspective, I can tell you, starting to implement like this book, Mindset by Carol Dweck, and reading through it, she's got great examples of one, fixed mindset traits and the way that parents implement them, with their children. And then two, growth mindset. And you go through these and you start recognizing in yourself, like, oh man, I've been a little bit fixed when it comes to this, this trait about my kid or this idea. That's going to be our athlete right there. He's going to be our athlete, or she's going to be our violinist. It's like, man, she could be anything. He could be anything. Like, instead of saying that's going to be our athlete, he really enjoys, man, he really, really works hard at playing basketball or soccer or baseball. He really loves to practice. And man, you really love to practice. You really love working hard. I can see it because you are showing, you're showing some great, results. There was a part in the book on parenting where she, Ms. Dweck, she mentions, what was it? It's the parents. They had a young child that was showing great potential, and this is an example of fixed mindset. Child was showing great potential, didn't get into a certain school, and this is a young kid. Didn't get into a certain school, and they turned cold towards the kid. They turned cold towards him, and where once they used to adorn him with praise and he's so smart, they actually pulled themselves away from the kid and didn't give him as much attention. start to watch, see if you're doing little things like this, and see, like get into her book, read it, and figure out like, man, maybe there's a different approach that we can take to this.
So maybe to bounce this into a more personal example, is there something that you have in your mind where maybe like I guess your older girl Isabel, where she like objectively failed something, and what did have you ever had a personal
Yes.
okay, I'm kind of
Yes.
interested to hear how you dealt with that.
Okay, so there's a few. I've got so many now. Back in the day, maybe not, but now there's so many. One with art, right? With art, we work on. She gets the thing where she's trying to create something and it doesn't come out just right, and she would get frustrated. And we started to talk to her. We told my wife, actually said, there are no rules in art. There are no rules in art, right? That right there, that little statement was such a growth mindset statement. And Isabel took that to heart. She realized like, oh, there are no rules. I can do whatever. I can create anything. And it's not bad or good if it doesn't work out. It's just like, I don't like that one. I'm going to try again. So she used to get frustrated and would throw away the paper and not want to do it anymore. We started implementing this. Hey, there's no good or bad here. There are no rules in art. You can do whatever you want. She heard that. Now all of a sudden she's like, don't like it so much. I'm going to do another one. And she'll continue to work on it until she gets it right. Until she gets it the way she likes it. It's like, oh my gosh, that just happened, right? So another one with food, right? Or dinner, food spills is what we're talking about, okay? So I remember, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there, you spill something back in the day, you felt like you're gonna get in trouble. You could get in trouble depending on what family you're in or where you are. Like, how dare you spill that? Whenever our kids spill stuff, and in the beginning they were both like, as they were starting to spill things, and Wyatt's still spilling stuff. I mean, he just intentionally dumps stuff out. He's 2 years old now, about to be 2. So, but when Isabel would knock over a glass of milk, or she would knock over her water, or knock over a juice, or spill her her food, she would get really upset. We started saying, hey, no problem. There's no problem. Pappy, I'm called Pappy, by the way. Your Pappy, he spills stuff all the time. And spills are no big deal. We just clean them right up. If we got worried about spills, we'd always be in trouble. No big thing on spills. And so she went from crying when she spilled something. Now, whenever she spills something or someone else spills something, she says, that's okay. Spills happen, right? Spills happen. That's what we tell. Spills happen. They're made to happen. You're going to spill stuff. And it was amazing to see her go from like really worried about, this, being perfect, not spilling, to saying, spills happen and we clean them up. So once you start implementing this stuff, it's almost, you see it everywhere. And that's what's so cool with her, with swimming. I mean, that's kind of what we're going through right now. Her first lesson, I realized that I had done some things wrong there. And that's a big thing with the growth mindset is parents, the way that we react to things. I had went in and kind of taken her and not really made her comfortable with the setting she was in. It was a brand new setting. She was her first class and it didn't go well. And she was, just not really happy. She was saying like, I'm sinking. I can't swim. I can't do this. And I was able to switch that and start communicating with her like, hey, your mom, your dad, we couldn't swim. Nobody can start swimming. We all sank. And that's okay. That's why we're doing this. It's practice. We keep practicing. And guess what? You're going to be able to swim. You're not going to sink, and we're going to help you, right? And so we started talking with that. Now I went through some motions with her and showed her, like, one of the things was she didn't want to get water up her nose. And I kind of just showed her this move, and we made it a bit of a game. And the second class, we go into the second class, she was over the roof, over the moon about just being there. She got really excited about her accomplishments, that she, was able to get on her back and kick, and that she could go underwater, that she knew she wasn't going to sink. And it was amazing. It was literally totally different person from the first class, the second class. And that was because of the communication, the way I reacted. Like, I didn't react and say, it's just going to be hard. It's just tough, or you're just not really good at it, or you know, like, I don't want to hear anything. You're just going to keep going because I say so, right? None of that stuff. It was, hey, you know, none of us could do it. None of us could do it. But none of us knew how to swim. And we practiced, and you're practicing, and you're going to get it, right? And we made that game, and it was amazing. So you start seeing this happen everywhere whenever you go through. And you know, I've spent some time with this book, and I think everybody should spend some time with this book, because once it becomes a habit, once you make growth mindset a habit, now, and this, you know, we have to always say this, it is a constant struggle. It's a constant journey, right? Like, it's not, you don't just end up eradicating all the bad thoughts or all the negative ideas or all the little things that have happened to you over, you know, the years that have conditioned you to think in fixed traits. But getting in that habit of, you know, if you do have a fixed thought or a limiting belief come into mind, being able to push it out of the way and move towards the growth mindset or the growth thought, you start getting that, and it changes all aspects of your life. And nothing but, I haven't seen anything but a positive change in my life when it came to the growth mindset.
And bouncing off of what you were talking about with your daughter Isabel, Carol Dweck, I believe her name's on the study, but don't hold me to that. She quoted it at the very least. About a study about how mothers who praised it was on 1, 2, and 3-year-olds, and then they came back 5 years later, and the study on it correlated how the mothers praised the 1, 2, and 3-year-olds with whether or not the child 5 years later was of growth or fixed mindset, and that's just
absolutely
huge into how that child's mind develops.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I'll add on to what you said earlier. Like, a huge factor is how parents respond to their children's mistakes. That's something that, and it's like, you don't even have to say, oh, you're a stupid loser, failure, whatever.
Right.
You can just look at them a certain way and they get the message.
Right. Absolutely. And that's, I mean, we have to notice, if you find yourself, you always do this, you're, you know, and you're assigning them traits in your reactions, or like you said, you're giving them body language, because we know body language is a huge part of how we communicate. The children are extraordinarily intuitive, they're more intuitive than we. I don't know if we have enough science, if we have the science to prove how intuitive they are, but they pick up on those vibrations. They pick up on if you're cold towards them, you don't have to say much for them to feel that. And so the way we react is so absolutely huge. And that's work we have to do. That's why we're doing this. This is work we're doing on ourselves. You know, we're not changing our kids here. We're changing ourselves, right? We're not changing our students. We're not changing our, you know, the people we work with. We're changing ourselves and giving the people around us an opportunity to grow. And that's what it's just, it's absolutely huge. Great point you made there. Yeah.
And children with a strong growth mindset are very different from fixed mindset children.
Recognizably,
there are so many different ways that you can that are just very cut and dry to put them into those two categories. So one example that's very cut and dry is when children are faced with a problem that's more advanced than their age range. The children with the growth mindset, you could put a CAT scan or whatever the heck it is, MRI, to their head, and you can see that the hamster is still spinning. They're trying. There's something.
Working to figure it out. They're working to figure it out. Yeah, they're engaging the challenge. Right.
Yeah. And fixed mindset children, they see it and you can just immediately see it turn off. No activity on that. And it's very easy to make that distinction. Another, the growth mindset children actually develop specific neuron densities in the brain that are extremely identifiable.
And then those
and
have become adults. I mean, you go on to be a child with a fixed mindset to becoming an adult with a fixed
exactly,
mindset.
those studies were done on children, but that's exactly how adults won't be any different.
Right.
They'll turn off immediately to something that's too hard, that challenges them too much or whatever, in the same way.
Right.
And another study that, just to emphasize why it's so important for your children to have this growth mindset is there was this study that where teenagers from the ages of so it was over the course of 4 years, teenagers from the age of 14 to the age of 18, they were broken into those categories: fixed and growth mindset, over the 4 years. And this was they took IQ tests at the beginning, in particular the math and verbal areas, and then at the end of those 4 years they took IQ tests again in the math and verbal areas. And the children who were fixed mindset lost IQ points. They were smarter at the age of 14, and the children who were growth mindset increased IQ points.
Right. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Yeah, absolutely. I could absolutely see that.
What are the benefits of thinking that your intelligence or personality is something that you can develop, as opposed to something that is a fixed, deep-seated trait?
Yeah, that's the crux. I think that we want to find when you have a fixed mindset, again, like you're boxed in, like you are either smart or you're dumb, right? And so there is no ability for you to grow there. And discomfort, uncomfortable situations, you are very likely to completely shy away from an uncomfortable situation. And when we look at it, there are likely all sorts of personality disorders that are developed from just being drilled with a fixed mindset all your life, and being conditioned with a fixed mindset all your life. When you have a growth mindset, you look at challenge as an opportunity. And once you start looking at challenges as opportunities to grow and to learn, and you start looking at what quote unquote failures, as instead of looking them as something that is about your character, and looking at them as these are lessons. So quote unquote failures now become lessons. Once you start developing that mindset that goes, man, this is a challenge and it didn't work out, I learned a big lesson here, and I'm going to change my direction next time. I'm going to do something different that allows me to overcome that challenge next time. Instead of just, and what happens in the fixed mindset is you bump up against something hard, you bump up against failure, and you go up. There's some great quotes by a lot of thought leaders that essentially say most people fail once and quit. Right. And that is the perfect, it's epitome of a fixed mindset. You fail once and quit. You submit your application, don't get the job. Well, that job wasn't meant for me. You submit the piece of art in a contest, you don't win, you don't hear anything back up. Well, I'm obviously not a very good artist. You go to a tryout to, try to be on a team, you don't get on the team. Well, obviously not my sport, or I'm not really an athlete, right? So that is what most people default to, is once they run into failure, or once they run into a challenge that they don't, quote unquote, again, succeed at, they just consider themselves a failure. And so developing that growth mindset will allow you to see a challenge or a failure as simply a lesson, and something that's inevitably going to happen whenever you try to try new things.
So aside from reading Mindset by Carol Dweck, what are some behaviors one could take to advance their journey on the growth mindset?
Okay, so that's a great question, and we're going to bring this up in some of our other stuff as well. Perfect time to bring it up. and I've actually got mine with me handy. I'm just going to show this. Okay, so one of the things that first step in understanding where your fixed traits lie and identifying some of your fixed ideas is you get a pad and a pen. And I would use a pad and a pen because these are mnemonic devices that are really, really effective, and they're on it. Writing something on a piece of paper is just very helpful. Okay, so most of what's happening to us right now is we wake up and we go through our day and we have all of these limiting beliefs and all of these limiting thoughts, and we're not acknowledging them. We're just allowing them to really control us. What you do is, and I believe you can see this, you can see I've got marks here, right? So you go, and when you have a fixed idea or a fixed thought, which can be anything, you know, there are plenty of examples. Go to our website and you'll be able to find the article on mindset. You'll be able to find some examples of limiting thoughts and fixed thoughts and fixed ideas. But and that can be anything from, like, again, I'm not smart enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not good enough. Anything that's that's giving you a fixed trait. That is, you need to make one mark, right? And do this for one day. Just start off with one day doing this. You are going to have, if you do this correctly, you carry it in your pocket, pull it out, and just make the note, make the mark. You're going to have a ton of these by the end of the day. It's crazy. When I started doing this, like, it was, I mean, I was having them, I mean, it's like you have your pen and pad out all the time. Like, I had it out all the time, making marks. Like, man, I am really, really hard on myself here, right? And so what you'll do is at the end of the day, you'll notice, like, okay, I had 37 limiting thoughts, or I had 198 limiting thoughts, or I had 342 limiting thoughts today, right?
And hey, I don't think those even have to manifest themselves as words.
Right, that's correct. That's exactly right. Yep. Right.
Yeah. That's
Absolutely.
something, while you're saying that, I'm just like, man, I'll get these impulses that'll just put me down too. It don't even have to come in a verbal
in an
context.
actual right, absolutely right. And so making those marks, just that allows you right there to say, okay, this is what's going on, right? And then you can see underneath this, I've got some sentences written. If you can capture the sentences and start to capture the actual thoughts themselves and write down that thought, you do this for a day, and then do this for 2 days, and then do this for 3 days, do it for 1 week. You're going to see your pattern right here in this little folder. You're going to see your pattern right there in front of you, unfold. And this is your first tool in breaking this pattern, because now that you've identified this stuff, you can go in and fix it. So the next step after you go in and start identifying the limiting thoughts and the fixed thoughts is you're going to, when you have one of those, simply state the opposite, or take the opposite impulse, take the opposite movement, right? So if it is, I'm just not good at that, I'm just really just not that type of person, you say to yourself, I am that type of person. It's that simple. And I know that sounds really simple, and you're like, is that it? Yes, that's it. Instead of whenever you have, I'm just really not that good at that, I'm just really not that smart, this is just who I am and I can't change it. I can change who I am. I am that smart. I am smart enough, right? It's that I am smart enough, I am whatever, and doggone it, people like me, right? I don't know if Cody may be a little bit too young for that Saturday Night Live, but the idea is the affirmation, the affirming thoughts, they are real. And especially if you're going through a lot of fixed thoughts and negativity, just taking those and moving them out of the way with a thought that affirms your worthiness, affirms self-love, affirms positivity, is going to absolutely compound and change things for you. So this right here, if you'll do this, if you'll just do this for 1 day, just do it for 1 day, hell, do it for 1 hour, and you will see just how deeply ingrained your patterns are, and you can start to change it. So this has been an amazing little device that I've used. And again, like, it's a struggle, you know, I mean, I still, like, that's from today, you know, so this is a struggle that there's no nirvana at the end of the tunnel on this, where all of a sudden you wake up and you're enlightened and you don't have negative thoughts or negative emotions or fixed ideas anymore. You're working on it daily. But what I can say is you get into the habit. When this was so powerful for me is when you get into it, you get into the habit of noticing the fixed traits, the fixed thoughts, the fixed ideas, the limited beliefs, and pivoting immediately to something more positive. You'll catch me doing it when we're talking. You and I, when we're having our meetings, when we're going through our stuff, I will stop mid-sentence when I'm saying something that's very limiting, and I'll say, nope, we are doing this. If we get this done, I will stop and like, when we're getting this done, now that we have gotten this done, we're moving on to this, right? So you start getting in a habit forms, and you start immediately pivoting to that positive affirmation or to that growth affirmation, that growth thought, right? And
to me, it manifests itself almost like a little person inside of my head that I got that I have a relationship with. You can call me crazy or whatever,
right?
It's the more I listen and the more I maintain that relationship, the more it needs me, and the less the less you hear it, and the more you just leave it alone and let the thought, hear the thought, let it pass, know that that's not you. You didn't make that thought. That's and you can't judge yourself for that thought. You can judge yourself for how you how you deal with that thought.
How you deal with it. Yes, absolutely.
But I think that's a very common pitfall that people do. They'll put themselves down for the thoughts that come into their head, which they have little, if no, control over.
Now let me come in on that, because that you just nailed it right there. That is a huge thing. So, and we were talking about this, earlier. One of the things that that happen with people is they get into that negative loop, right? So if you have a bad thought and you judge yourself on the thought, right, it's very likely that you're going to continue judging yourself over and over on that thought. And one of the things that's beautiful about the growth mindset and working through this, and we go back to the old adage, you fall off the horse, you get back on it. And that's what you need to do. It's that simple. You fall down 6 times, you get up 7. You just get back on the horse. You just program yourself to move past the drudgery, move past that negative loop. And you just simply, hey, it happened, I acknowledge it, and now I'm moving on. Don't get into judging yourself for your thoughts. Just like you said, that's, absolutely huge. People are doing this and they don't realize it. We're doing this and we don't realize it. We're judging ourselves on our thoughts. And if you start to think about that, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all to judge yourself on a thought. It just doesn't. You need to move on past that, right? So that's a great point. Great point there, man. Yeah.
How does one make sure they aren't fooling themselves into thinking they have a growth mindset? Carol Dweck used like an example, and I might butcher it, but she said that most of us have these 2 different personas in our head, and oftentimes, if you can satisfy one of them, you're okay. And and maybe a good comparison is like the internal you that's satisfied with X versus the one that you want everyone to see you as. Maybe that's the best dichotomy.
Yeah, and so, and this, again, like I want everybody to read, because I could butcher this answer too. One of the things I can say that I've noticed, because I think this is a really, really deep question, actually, right? This is, so how do we know that we're not fooling ourselves into thinking we've got a growth mindset when we're really just living in a fixed mindset? And that's, for me, and again, simple answer, challenge yourself. Are we actually challenging ourselves, or have we made our surroundings comfortable enough to where we can just be content, right? So and it's hard because you can't really qualify, a lot of this. A lot of this is theoretical, right? So and what I can say is you have to do some internal work, some looking at yourself, and really, really getting in front of that mirror and saying, okay, like, what do I really want to do? What are my real goals here, right, in life? And we all need to set goals in life, and pushing yourself into those uncomfortable situations. So one of the things I was thinking about the other day, all of us had dreams when we were kids. We all had dreams. We all had things that we wanted to do. You could ask a kid, hey, what do you want? You ask any kid, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? That's a dream. Those dreams usually get suppressed, or they get redirected, or they get just conditioned out of us, right? Because most of them are like, I want to be an astronaut. And it's like, well, Johnny, you're not smart enough to be an astronaut, so you're going to have to pick firefighter. Nothing against firefighters. Nothing against firefighters. There's some brilliant firefighters. But, you know, or you're going to have to be a plumber. Nothing against plumber, right? But right there, you see there's already that fixed mentality starting to set in. Somebody, somehow, some way, Johnny or Billy or Teddy or Ann or Janet, they are starting to develop fixed mindsets that say, you can't do that. You need to have more grounded goals, right?
You can't be president, you know.
You can't be president, right? No, you cannot be president. You cannot be president of a company, right? You cannot be president of your own company, right? So those fixed traits are already setting in. What I've often recently started to get into is trying to go back to what are some goals that I really have. Some big, we call them big, hairy, audacious goals, right? From that's Collins' book, right? So what are some big goals I have for my life? And if I'm being honest, like, I want to do this. You know, I was talking to a friend the other day who had this goal that he's never taken one step on, and it was huge for him. And he's never taken a single step towards it, right? But it was something that he really wanted to happen in his life. And it was like, man, like right there, just because you're open and maybe, maybe you're doing pretty well in life, you don't get fooled by thinking, man, I'm into this growth mindset thing. If you've got goals, if you've got things that you want to happen in your life, and you're not putting yourself in that uncomfortable place to fail and to learn and to have lessons learned from those uncomfortable situations, then you are probably not going as far into the growth mindset as you could, right? So one of the things that I always bump it up against is, am I uncomfortable? Am I putting myself in an uncomfortable situation? Am I putting myself in a place where I don't feel content? And if I'm not, then I'm likely taking on some fixed traits there. Now, Carol Dweck may have a totally different answer, but for me, and that's one of the things that's kind of cool about, learning this stuff, is you have to find, devices, you have to find actions that help you to develop. And one of mine is to know that if we're finding ourselves in a really comfortable place, we need to start checking ourselves. I need to start checking myself and saying, okay, hold on. Like, I am possibly not, working on putting myself out there enough to.
Yeah, I'm not filling my shoes to the fullest.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that's a great way to put that. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that leads us to the fixed versus growth mindset in the workplace. I've got notes that say that you've got Enron as an example.
Okay, so we're going to go back on this one. So this part will cut right here. So your lead over to that will be like, all right, let's talk about the workplace.
Okay.
You want to do that? Like, let's just switch it over. Like, let's talk about the workplace. Tell like what are some examples of like, let's do that. Do it that style.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the workplace. Fixed growth mindset.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about the work culture and how that affects workplace?
So, okay, yeah, and you'll start to see there's absolutely a thread that runs through all this, right? I mean, you're going to find similarities everywhere. Work cultures. One of the examples she uses, Carol Dweck uses in the book, is Enron. She uses Enron as an example as a fixed mindset workplace where only the smartest were going to be employed, and only your intelligence was was judged. That's it, right? And so we all know what happened to Enron. And then she uses some, I think she used Kimberly Clark as an example, the former CEO and president of Kimberly Clark as an example of a growth mindset. And you can look at his mentality. She uses just several great examples on from a work culture perspective. So one of the things that, you know, I've noticed in my years of working, I've definitely been in both places, without a doubt. I've been in companies where a mistake will get you fired, period, no questions asked. And I've been in a place where companies where mistakes are what we want to make. We want to make them. We want to make them now. We want to make them fast. We want to make them hard. And we want to move on, right? And you can see I mean, literally, it's almost like a, you know, like something you can see as a difference in cultures there.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have is workers that are, and this is one of the statements that I've always judged this by, to know whether or not you're in a fixed place of work or a growth place of work. If someone says to you, well, I don't want to get fired, and not we're not talking about breaking the rules, but I don't want to mess up. Like, I don't want to do this because I don't want to get fired, right? If they're looking at not getting fired as the goal to work, they are in a fixed place, period. If a worker is saying, man, I want to do this because it's going to help me move up the ladder, or it's going to help my company, or it's going to help my team that I'm out in the field with, if they say that, or they say, man, we might not want to do that because it's not going to help us, that's a growth team, right? That's a growth work cultures. And literally you will see this. People will, in their conversations, it'll be about being fired or about being promoted, right? And those two things, it almost without a doubt absolutely works to find out whether or not you're in a growth or a fixed mindset workplace. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, you know, I would say to business owners, you know, especially when we're talking about workplace, if you're a leader in a business setting, you really, really, really owe it to yourself and to your people to work on the growth mindset and implementing the growth mindset with your teams and with your workers. They are going to be empowered. They're going to take responsibility more. They're going to want to do the right thing more. They're going to want to take the best actions that they can and take responsibility for those actions whenever they don't go perfectly right. So you as an owner of a business, or as a team lead, as a foreman, as a CEO, and one of the things Dweck, she mentions the CEO disease, right? So the CEO, that's a thing very common where the CEO is the genius and everybody else needs to follow what the CEO does. We're moving away from this as a culture, I think, in business, but it definitely, I mean, in general, it still exists. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of it until everybody adopts a growth mindset. But this is something that we've seen historically quite often, is developing this, I am the smartest, I am the top dog, and everybody else is just going to do what I say, right? And we see these companies that fail because the higher echelon, the top echelon of the workforce can't be argued with, can't be disagreed with, can't be wrong, right? And so you owe it to yourself, without a doubt, as a boss, to get this book and read it and understand how you can motivate your workers to be the best people they can be, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Carol Dweck quoted a study about basically when you're hard on yourself and when you fixate on your failure or a relapse or something, that you're significantly more likely to relapse again. Mm-hmm. And so I guess when she says that, like, what comes to my mind is there was a study done with lab rats where they were like going to a room to cheese, right? The rats that also had a cat in their room that they were leaving went faster to the cheese because they had two motivators. They wanted to be away from the cat and they wanted to eat. And so I don't know, I see a little bit of that being extremely valuable, but the way that Carol Dweck really put it, it seemed like it really came off as, no, don't you know, don't put yourself down at all, is what it seemed like to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, that's a debatable, idea. I think we want to get to that place. I think we want to get to a place where the transition and understanding a mistake is so quick that you don't have time to put yourself down, right? Because what we do see is people not being able to stop the loop. And I think that's really probably what she's trying to convey there, is stopping that loop when you get in it can be really, really difficult if you don't have a lot of practice. And you see, like you said, you mentioned this with someone trying to stop something, right? If they are constantly deriding themselves about the action that they're taking, we see it all the time. This is where, alcoholics relapse, drug addicts relapse, smokers relapse, like issues come up over and over because the person is constantly telling themselves they don't need to do this. They shouldn't do this. They're a bad person because of this. If you make those statements, you're literally they are going to happen. If you say, man, I really don't want to smoke another cigarette, you are literally going to go smoke another cigarette. If you're saying, man, I don't want to beat myself up about this all the time, you are going to beat yourself up about this.
Oh, I'll start tomorrow. You're not starting tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Oh, I will start tomorrow. You will not start tomorrow. That's exactly right. Take the action now, right? And move on. Just move on, right? And that's a thing that it's a habit, and it's something you have to work at, because inevitably you've got something to do. You're going to say to yourself, well, I can do that later. And we're going to get into that. This is a little teaser, but the 5-second rule, Mel Robbins, she's coming up. She's real close around the corner here, and she's got a great mechanism for just taking action and moving on, right? But I think, what you're mentioning there is something that that's a goal, is to not beat yourself up, right? To not have any sort of negative connotation towards something you did that may not have been exactly what you needed to do, to not beat yourself up about it. And is it necessary to, kind of scold yourself on something? I don't think it is. Now, if it's in the meantime, while you're working on this, you may need, if you're not taking notice, if you have no conscience, and like you do something pretty bad and you don't even consider that whatsoever, that's an issue, right? Like if you're smoking cigarettes, a pack of cigarettes a day, or you are talking down to your kids, talking bad about your kids, or talking bad about your wife, or talking bad about your husband, and you don't have any self-conscious or any self-reflection about that, that's an issue. So it's a tough one. That's a kind of a gray area where you don't want to, it's not, to me, noticing, taking note of an error, or somewhere where you may have a lesson that needs to be learned, and moving on is the most important part of it. I've been working on trying to turn that from me dwelling on the thing that I did wrong to me saying, okay, didn't work, I'm moving on, right? So that's the big transition that I've been working on.
I find it especially personally, I find it especially valuable to not put myself down. Like if there's something that I had told myself I'm not going to do, or whatever, especially like, when you just kind of see yourself in the moment, like to not put yourself down, to look and be aware, and to make sure that you acknowledge fully to yourself, like what's happening here. Right. And that to me is very useful. That's very powerful for me to regulate my own behaviors, like, and to build better habits. And is like when I see a negative habit, like just like really just be aware of that moment, and just emphasize to yourself that and so what do you think's the difference between a mindset and a habit? This is like the chicken and the egg, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So, okay, the difference between a mindset and a habit. To me, the mindset precludes, the mindset is before the habit. The mindset is what sets the habit into motion. Personally, that's my belief. Now, like you said, chicken and egg thing, could the habit eventually set the mindset into motion? Possibly. I personally have found a lot of positive results in switching the mindset, because that allows me, once I'm able to, like for instance, mindset wise, once I decided that I was going to wake up at this time, I was going to, not necessarily, I wake up every morning at the same time. I haven't had an alarm in 20 years. I'm up at about between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, no matter what, every morning, right? But here's the rub. Do I actually get out of bed? Okay, right? And so this is a perfect example of mindset to habit, right? So I can make the habit of getting out of bed, but for me, just getting out of bed, like just getting up, I wasn't able to actually make that happen, right? That habit, I wasn't able to get that habit going until I said, okay, I'm going to wake up within this amount of time. I'm going to get up. I'm going to get out of bed within this amount of time. And what I did was use Mel Robbins' her 5-second rule, where I counted down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just get out of bed, right? And that was a mindset that for me was a very big mind shift, where it was, there were no questions here. I've got a countdown of 5 that I'm getting up, and that's going to be something that I do every day. And that started to allow me to go, oh, okay, I'll just lay here for 10 more minutes, right? I'll just lay here for 10 more minutes. It's okay. It's cool. Nothing, I don't, need to get up, which turned into 20 minutes, right? In the past. So that, like, starting to take note, this right here, right? This is, it's almost like if I'm being honest, it's hard for me to even, to separate the two, because this is a habit and a mindset all in one to me, right? So in the mindset side of this, I'm taking note of negative or limiting beliefs, and I'm creating this habit where I am marking them down, taking note in the mind, and shifting, right? But without that, I think for me, without the shift in the mind, without that first initial shift to say, I'm going to make this decision to do this, it's really hard to get those habits to stick, right? Mm-hmm. It's like we're talking about with the smoker, or the person trying to break that habit where they continually tell themselves, like, oh, I gotta quit doing this. Well, as long as your mind is focused on what you don't want to happen, what you don't want to do, you're going to continue to do those things. You're going to continue to manifest those things, right? So once you change the mind and you say, okay, like, instead of me dwelling on the fact that I keep failing this, I'm just going to get back on that horse and I'm going. I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to judge myself on this thought. I'm not going to judge myself on this over and over again. I'm just going to move on. That allows you to start getting that habit to really take root, and you start implementing that habit, right? And that mindset, they start to really work together. So that's a great question. And I would say personally, mindset, really trying to change that mindset allowed me to implement those habits. I mean, hell, habit is a mindset, right? I mean, like, and personally, I believe that habit is a mindset, and that's something I had to learn and was really happy to learn. Yeah, it's a great question.
So, a recap, you want to develop a growth mindset. You want to look at challenges as opportunities for growth. You want to begin identifying your fixed mindset traits and work to eradicate them. You want to put yourself into uncomfortable situations. They will help your growth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a good discussion, man. Next week we're going to actually let's redo that part. So, before we do that, I'll do the recap. Let's talk sports. Yeah. Sports is a big one in there for hers. So let's go to sports, because I want to use McEnroe and Jordan as and that's a big part of our book, is the sports part. So you can say, all right, we talked a little bit about parents, teachers, and work. Let's talk about sports. All right, I can make that decision. Okay. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. So we've all right, 3, 2, 1. So we've talked about parents, we've talked about teachers, we've talked about work. Let's talk about sports. That this was a big point in her book, when she talked about athletics and competition. She used two great examples. From the fixed mindset was John McEnroe, and the growth mindset was Michael Jordan. And the it once again synonymous with, you look at McEnroe's career, and you look at his interviews, you look at the way he described his career. You see a person that was wanted to be catered to, a person that if he lost a match, there was a reason for him losing a match, and the reason wasn't because he wasn't prepared or he just didn't have his best game. And you compare that to a Michael Jordan who had an extraordinarily dedicated work ethic, and really engaged his sport with a total growth mindset that, like, I'm here to grow my team. I'm here to make my team better. He was almost mechanical in his growth mindset. Really unbelievable. As we all know, Michael Jordan, probably arguably the best basketball player that ever, set foot on the court. But from an athletics perspective, from a coach's perspective, this is something that, I mean, man, coaches out there, if you're listening, you need to get this book for sure, because what you are conveying to your athletes, what you're saying to them and telling them, if you really need to check that. And if you will start implementing growth mindset statements and actions in your coaching regimen, you are going to see players that will totally take off. Once a player is no longer worried about messing up, once they are no longer worried about the challenges, about losing. I went through this as an athlete. Whenever, like, it was 15 years old. I can tell a story about this, man. I mean, when I was 15, I had essentially a big realization that, up to that point, all I cared about was winning, man. All I cared about was winning. I wanted to win, and if I didn't win, I was extraordinarily upset. She uses Billy Beane. His story really, and this is was a promising baseball player who went on to be the GM for the Athletics, and they were the ones. Billy Beane, he was the one that implemented that essentially that algorithm that brought all those the mediocre players on the Athletic Oakland A's. They made a movie about it. Brad Pitt plays the. Anyways, he had a very fixed mindset towards his ability to play whenever he was a baseball player, and she compared it to Lenny Dykstra. And Lenny Dykstra was a teammate of Billy Beane's. Billy Beane, man, every time he went up to bat, that wasn't an opportunity for him to get a hit. That, for him, it was an opportunity to strike out. Like, it was a possibility he was going to fail. And it really, he was an amazing athlete that got destroyed by the fixed mindset. Lenny Dykstra wasn't nearly the talent that Billy Beane was, and he went on to be an extraordinary player. And he was kind of the epitome of baseball. Like, he was a person that just did not give up. So, one of the things from an athletic perspective, if you're an athlete, don't worry about, I had to start, I was saying, look, when I was 15 and it switched on, then I realized I didn't have to win. It wasn't about winning. It was about competing. And it was about challenging myself. Things changed for me, and I went on to play on some amazing teams, and went on to have some great success in athletics before I decided to pivot and get away from it. And it was literally a change in mind of realizing that you're going to lose. You're going to fail in athletics. It's 100% failure rate that's going to happen. You are going to fail. There's never been an athlete in a sport or a competition that has never lost, right?
Yeah. The growth mindset athletes are focused on, like, the meta game.
Yes.
There's
yes.
there's a focus on that. Like, it's because I'm sure everyone's had parents say, oh, it's not about winning, and then, like, the kids, like, thinking in their head, well, it freaking is. What the hell are you talking about? And, like, I think like, a lot of us will say that, and we you know, we don't even know what it means a lot.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
but we'll say it
Yeah.
because you kind of you get the idea. You know, like that I think that really is kind of pointing at that meta game that you're playing. It's like you're going to be doing another game of this and another game of this, and the point of it's not to win this specific one. It's
Right.
You can win at the meta game if you play by the rules of the meta game.
You look at the championship teams. Look at the New England Patriots. Look at the Chicago Bulls of the 90s. Look at any dynasty out there. They have committed to a process, and they know that failure is going to happen. They are going to lose games. They are going to mess up plays, and they are not dwelling on the failure. They are moving towards fixing the issue. That's it. That is growth mindset. You look at what they're doing. Bill Belichick and the Patriots have been doing for a while. They're a great example to me, just because they speak openly about it. That's what I love about them, is they talk about the process. They are so into the process that they know they're going to come out on top. They are competing with themselves and the perfection of the process more than they're competing with the opponent. I would argue. I may be wrong there. But essentially they know that if they absolutely implement the process, they will win, right? And so it's a constant battle to implement that process to the point of perfection. And they know that they do that, they will win the long haul, right? You may be losing the race, but you can win the marathon. And that's that meta you're talking about. I think the growth mindset athletes are competing against themselves and are competing against another level of perfection that they know they're not going to attain. But it's like, you know, if you shoot for the clouds and you just land right under them, you land on the mountaintop, you still got a pretty good view, you know. And that's what the growth mindset athletes, that's what they're going into is, hey, I know that if I implement this process, that success is going to be had. And yeah, so that's absolutely a great way to put that, is they are focused on the meta, because that's where it's at. That's absolutely where it's at. This has been a very exciting discussion. Cody, thanks so much for joining me and leading this discussion on Carol Dweck's mindset. Next week, we're going to pivot from mindset to habit, and we'll be exploring the 5-second rule, which I mentioned, by Mel Robbins. We'll also be exploring Atomic Habits by James Clear and The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. These books, in my opinion, are absolutely critical in helping us understand how small actions taken consciously over time can transform our lives. It can transform our day-to-day lives, which in turn transforms our long-term lives and our long-term health. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, if it interests you, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. And now go out and break this habit.
And I'ma do it till it's right.
Got it.
If time allows, I'ma do that it's twice. I'ma do it. Watch me prove it. Dream it, believe it, achieve it, be it. The motto, the slogan, the recipe is secret.
Be great, be strong, see fate, live long, be right, be wrong, travel out to Hong Kong, set dates, we bomb, feel hate, be calm, take life, give bomb, see ya, man, I'm long gone. And I won't holler till sometime next year. I put my trophies on the wall, hunt the wild, no fear. Had to tell them about my life, so I wrote them all a novel. Keep your mind right, anything's possible. I wake up and conquer, catch river monsters, I go bonkers. I get the team sponsored, I break beats down, bring the streets around, stand on level ground. My soul is heaven bound. I talk to governors, I fell in love with her. She can be my blanket, I'ma be a comforter. Take the long way home.